Good morning. I make it 10 o'clock. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this. If you can, one of my prompts is to turn off your Teams volume. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Eastern Area Planning Committee, Wednesday, 9th of October at the Allendale Centre in Wimborne. This is one of 3 area-based planning committees of Dorset Council. For the benefit of the public, I'm Councillor David Tuck, Chair of this area planning committee. To my right is Councillor Duncan Sowery-House, who's the Vice Chairman. Our officers attending today are Kim Cowell, Elizabeth Adams, looking for where they're hiding, James Brightman on the corner, Lara Altree, who is our senior lawyer, Victoria Chivis, coming later, Megan Rochester, who is our Democratic Services officer, and Joshua Kennedy, who is also a Democratic Services officer. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's meeting, especially members of the public who are here to listen to the debate and the decisions being taken and have the opportunity to address the committee in accordance with our procedures. Please be aware the meeting is being live streamed and a copy of the recording of the meeting will be available on the website after the meeting, and by attending this meeting you consent to being filmed. Please can I ask all those in the room ensure their mobile phones are switched off or turned to silent. I'd like to refer everyone's attention to our public participation protocol. This is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting, and only those who have registered to speak will be allowed to address the committee. The first 3 members of the public, including any community or amenity group who have registered to speak, for and against the application, including the applicant or their representative, so that's a maximum of 6 in total, will be invited to address the committee. If the applicant or their representative registers to speak, then only the first 2 members of the public who wish to speak for the application may address the committee. MPs need to register in the same way and will count as one of the 6 speakers. Town and parish councillors and ward members of Dorset Council who are not members of the committee and who wish to address the committee will be allowed to speak, provided they have given sufficient notice. Thank you. All requests have to have been registered with our Democratic Services Support Officer, Megan Rochester, by 8:30 a.m. on Monday, the 7th of October. When invited to speak, please take your place at the table there, marked public speakers. Speak clearly into the microphone, which you turn on by pressing the little button on the front with a picture of a voice speaking. And then return to your seat when finished. Each speaker will be strictly limited to 3 minutes, and the Vice Chairman will indicate when you have 30 seconds left. Once we have heard from all the public speakers, I will close the public part of the meeting and no further interventions will be allowed. Furthermore, I would politely ask members of the public not to approach members of the committee during any short adjournments during an application being considered, as this could affect the lawfulness of the decision of the committee. Moving on to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies. Do we have apologies for absence?
We've received apologies for absence from Councillors Beryl Ezard and Hannah Hobsham.
Thanks. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination? Councillor Gorringe.
Chairman, item 6. Well, first of all, I'm the councillor for the St Leonard's and St Ives ward. Item 6, which is the barn and kennels at Lions Hill Farm, Ashley Heath, St Leonard's. I'm the chairman of the parish council. The parish council has a separate planning committee of which I am not a member, and therefore consider myself not predetermined. I'm here today to consider this application on its own merits, considering all the information before the committee and various comments for and against this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gorringe. And I take it there are no other declarations of interest. Should something come up during the meeting which you think you should declare, please let me know straight away. Everybody should have seen the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on Wednesday, 4th September. They've been circulated to members in advance of this meeting. They've been published on the website. Do I have a proposer and seconder for those minutes? Councillor Brenton proposing, Councillor Flower seconding. Do we accept those minutes?
Agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Any against? No. I've talked about public participation a moment ago. There is an opportunity right now for people to speak if they wish, or they may well wish to wait until the item is called through the agenda. So unless there's somebody wishing to speak at this point, we'll move on. So we have several, in fact, we've got 7 applications before us today, which we'll consider in turn. Have there been any requests for deferral, withdrawal?
Through you, Chairman, no, there have been no requests for deferrals or withdrawals.
Okay, thank you. So the background information relating to the applications before us has been available for inspection by the members prior to the meeting, covering consultations, objections, representations, as well as the Dorset local plan, Purbeck local plan, the council's related policies. We'll take each application in turn and we'll use the following procedure. So for each application, I invite the case officer to present their report and recommendations. After that, I will invite members of the public, planning agents, applicants, town and parish councils who've registered to speak to address the committee. Please come to the small table in front when I call your name, speak into the microphone by pressing on the right-hand side button and press again to turn off when you're finished. Following public section of every item, I will ask the officers if there are any salient points they wish to clarify. I will then open up to members of the committee for questions, clarification, and then evolve into a debate at that point. In order to run the meeting, may I request that the members of the committee direct any remarks and questions through the chair, and I'll invite members to speak in turn. Proposals must be seconded before being debated or voted on. Any amendments proposed and seconded will be debated and voted on before the substantive motion, and if successful, will update the substantive motion. I need to keep to the script, so I'll make sure I don't miss anything out. Otherwise, we're all in trouble. I can ask members if they can keep Teams microphones on mute and ensure your device volume is set to 0. Please use the desk microphone supplied. Ensure you talk directly into the mic. Please state your name when you speak. At the end of the debate, I'll take a vote by a show of hands. And if 3 or more members make a request, that will then be recorded in the minutes. Due to the technology, there may be a short gap whilst the presentations are loaded, in case officers take their place to introduce a planning application, and we'll take comfort breaks as appropriate. I will now hand over to the case officer who will introduce us to the first planning application, and that is going to be James Brightman. James, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Before we start, there has been a quick update. There's been a petition submitted by Samantha Stone with 2,500 signatories in support of the proposal. That was within the last week. This application is to change the use of land and buildings to an animal rescue centre with ancillary offices and storage, to demolish a hay storage silage clamp, provide 2 single-storey extensions to the existing buildings, obtain a mobile home for animal welfare, provide parking with associated works. The site is to the west of Ashley Heath, southeast of Woolsbridge, and northeast of West Moors. The site is to the south of the Horton Road and north of the Castleman Trailway. The site is 6.3 hectares and in the countryside outside the settlement boundaries and also in the Greenbelt. The dwelling immediately to the west here is in the ownership of the applicants. This photo, number one, shows the approach to the site down the unsurfaced track. Also is shared with a handful of other dwellings. The second photo shows the existing barn with an open sided building immediately adjacent to it, which is to be demolished. Photo 3 shows the barn to be extended. The single-storey flat roof building in the foreground is also to be extended, but on the opposite side to the photo. Photo 4 looks towards the paddock and the dog exercising areas. This is the proposed site plan. The areas in brown are the areas for extension. The demolition of the hay store and the side clamp will just be seen with the red dashed lines there and the side clamp at the back. Single story extension in this position here, wrapping around the barn, and the office extension in this east there. The exercise areas, 2 dog exercise areas here, and with a paddock for horses or donkeys there, and a fenced off area to create a courtyard and outside pens for the dogs in this area. And this is the mobile home to be retained for welfare. These are proposed elevations. There's a low-level single-storey extension to the office building here, following the flat roof, the existing flat roof. You can see the other extension there. Opposite side, this is the main extension, the low-level roof for the dog kennels. Wrapping around, this is the barn in the background. Extension, this is the main door to the barn. This is the office extension here with the existing office buildings back here. Sorry. And again, the wraparound extension for the kennels on the barn here with the existing office building here. The floor plan shows existing offices in this area here with this square section for extension, existing barn with the wraparound extension and the exterior dog pens in this area. In terms of the principle of the development, the officers don't consider the development is functionally required to be in a rural area. And it's therefore contrary to core strategy policy KS2, which sets out the settlement hierarchy. Also, there is no certainty that the proposal would not have a significant impact on the adjacent Lions Hill site of special scientific interest, on the exercising of dogs on this area, and it would have a materially greater impact on the Greenbelt, contrary to policy PC4. And therefore, officers don't think the development is acceptable in principle. In terms of the impact on the Greenbelt, though the extensions to the barn are proportionate in scale to the original barn in terms of their volumes, the additional walls to form the outside kennel runs in this area on the south and east sides and of the extensions, the further volume created with the pitch roof extensions would not be proportionate to the original building, therefore inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. And the National Plan and Policy Framework, the NPPF, paragraph 154C, doesn't apply. Development would extend south and east beyond the curtains of the buildings benefiting from the office use, and beyond the extent of the previously developed land would have a greater impact on the Greenbelt than the existing development. The outside fenced area and yard would have some impact on openness. The use of the other buildings on the site are appropriate. They have no extensions, but there would also be some encroachment of the countryside from this fenced area and the fenced paddocks. The proposal on this basis, the proposal fails to accord with the National Plan and Framework Greenbelt policy. and whether there are any very special circumstances to outweigh this harm will be discussed further in the presentation. The impact on the Dorset heathlands. These purple-pink areas here, this is the Lions Hill site of special scientific interest. It's also a special protection area, special area of conservation, and a Ramsar site, and part of the Dorset heathlands. You can see here some of its west boundaries immediately adjacent to the application site. Proposal has potential to have significant impacts on the heathland. Natural England was consulted to inform a necessary appropriate assessment under the habitats regulations. Natural England has objected, as it is likely to only be in exceptional circumstances that the effects or increased risk arising from the very close proximity to the heathland would not add to the adverse pressures on the integrity of the heathland in combination with other plans and projects. The applicants have been in discussion with Natural England during the course of the application to see if there was any way to mitigate the impact and satisfy Natural England. The applicants suggest the risk of heathland is low for these reasons set out on the slide. Waggy Tails, the applicant, have an existing facility at Canford Magna with similar capacity for dogs, 30 dogs. That is near a heath, but not as near as this. Waggy Tails chooses not to exercise their dogs on the heathland for practical reasons, as you can see there. They say there was no objection from Natural England to their 2018 proposal at their Canford Magna site. And Natural England accepted a condition regarding the code of practice for dog walking. They are suggesting a similar management plan can be adopted to control the exercise of dogs on the application site. The 6 hectares of the fenced private open space at the application site can be operated like a suitable alternative natural green space. Waggy Tails consider this is ideal for walking and training dogs without encounters with the public and other animals. Waggy Tails think that longer walks are available from the site along the Castleman Trailway, but access could be restricted if Natural England are concerned about this. Waggy Tails consider dogs are always kept on leads when being walked on the public and private land. The use generates rodent noise, as it is not a boarding kennels. Dogs live as near as possible to home environments and attended immediately if there is an issue. Waggy Tails will have regular engagement with monitoring by the council's dog warden, and that could be secured to gain compliance. And also the land will not be made available to the public to exercise dogs. As I said, they have submitted the management plan that's being looked at by Natural England. And basically that says the trailway may be used occasionally in exceptional circumstances, but dogs will be on leads and one-to-one with a handler. Dogs will not be walked on the heath, and dog feces will be collected in the appropriate way, and the charity has a regular yellow bin service from the site. Natural England has looked at this management plan and advised that the mitigation proposed, they accept they have tried, but it maintains its objection that it can't be certain that the proposed use for keeping dogs would not have an adverse impact on the adjacent heathland. This is because little, if any, weight can be given to a reduction in pressure at the existing facility at Canford Magna, because the aim of the project is to sell that facility, move to this one, and have a single site. As Canford Magna is more remote from the heath, with no direct access other than by driving. And there is also a bespoke, suitable alternative natural green space near Canford Magna, with car parking to the north to reduce the pressures. The dogs are exercised twice daily, and the risk of exercise taking place on the heathland over the lifetime of the proposal cannot be excluded, say Natural England. The proposed measures are voluntary and dependent on consistent staff volunteer management over time. It is not clear that Dorset Council is adequately resourced to take responsibility for the necessary monitoring and any enforcement action. Part of the consideration officers have now undertaken an appropriate assessment of the proposal as required, with its likely impacts, and consider the applicant's mitigation measures and Natural England's advice. Due to the close proximity between the application site and the accessible protected heathland, and reliance on volunteers complying with the trust policy, officers are not satisfied that the mitigation measures can be effectively secured in perpetuity, Therefore, the appropriate assessment is to identify the likelihood of harm to the heathlands. Officers consider there are no imperative reasons of overriding public interest that would justify approving the application, given it has not been demonstrated that harm to the heathland would be avoided. And on this basis, the proposal conflicts with policy ME1 and PC4 of the core strategy, and also paragraph 185 of the National Planning Policy Framework. The next impact is on the character and appearance of the area. There will be no adverse impacts on the character and appearance of the area, given the reuse of the buildings is proposed with extensions have not been visually prominent, and the site benefits from natural screening. Vehicle trips associated with the proposed use are not expected to be high and unlikely to exceed those of the existing office lawful use. No adverse impact on the rural character of the area will result. On this basis, the proposal accords with core strategy policy 83. There is potential impact on the amenity of the nearby occupants of properties. As you can see on this map here, Springbucks is the nearest residential property, and Forest Gate House here, and this is the rough site boundary. And down here are the kennels. The use of keeping dogs has potential for noise from barking and also operational noise from the use of the facility, and that could affect nearby residents. The application is supported by a noise impact assessment, which the Council's Environmental Health Officer has looked at. And also a management plan for noise, which has also been looked at by the Council's Environmental Health Officer. That sets out the mitigation measures. The Council's Environmental Health Officer is content with the noise mitigation measures, provided conditions secure them. And these are set out in either the noise management plan or the noise impact assessment. And those measures are basically to provide further noise insulation in buildings to house the dogs, and to have certain building works to prevent noise, certain fencing. They are set out there, and if it was to be agreed, we would propose that condition. And on that basis, policies HE2 and SAGE policy DES2 of the East Dorset Local Plan would be complied with. Further issue was the flood risk and drainage of the site. And the site itself is not in any flood risk for surface water drainage. As you can see, these are the high risk areas here. Darker blue, the higher the risk. So part of the access is in the high risk, and our flood risk manager has looked at the site. And given there is a potential access to the south, which is not proposed by the application, but potentially could go in an emergency to use that, they don't object. But there's high groundwater over the whole site, and the applicants liaise with the council flood risk manager, and the flood risk manager will agree there's no objection on the basis of pre-commencement conditions to secure surface water drainage and its management to be agreed. Highway safety was a concern that was raised during the application. There were several detailed objections received. Our council highways officers looked at those detailed objections and considers in respect to the impact on road safety, given the low volume of traffic and the existing use of the site, the lawful use of the site. There's no objection on, because there's no material harm to the transport network or highway safety, and therefore policy KS11 is complied with. To conclude, the proposal is inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, which is given substantial weight. The substantial weight is also afforded to the likely significant impacts on the Dorset heathlands on the exercising of dogs staying at the site, given the lack of certainty offered by the management plan. The degree of weight to be given to the need for dog rescue facilities is limited. It's the proposal to replace the existing Whaley Tales premises in Canford Magna, which has a similar capacity, 30 dogs. This is considered to be a more sustainable location to house animals, as it is closer to the conurbation. The proposed reuse of buildings is the benefit, and the noise impact assessment has demonstrated there will be no harmful impact on the amenity of occupants of nearby properties. There will be no adverse on highway safety or the character and appearance of the area. Consideration has been given to the potential to accommodate other animals at the site, other than dogs, that cannot be accommodated at the existing Canford Magnus site, but limited evidence has been provided to show this would be realistic. The benefits of additional outdoor space for the charity compared to its existing premises are recognised. These are not judged to be so special as to outweigh the harm to the greenbelt and other harm arising. The benefits from providing a charity and the dog homing area in an area in a time of need for rehoming dogs have been recognised in this assessment too, and officers respect that. But overall, in balancing up the judgments, this is not judged. The benefits of the proposal would clearly outweigh the harm to the greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm resulting from the proposal, or the harm to a protected habitat site in spite of site of special scientific interest. Officers consider there are no imperative reasons of overriding public interest that would justify approval of the scheme, which is likely to result in significant harm to the integrity of the habitat sites. Proposed is contrary to policies ME1 of the Christchurch and East Dorset Course Strategy 2014, paragraphs 186B, 142 to 143, 152 to 155 of the National Plan and Policy Framework, and refusal is recommended for the two reasons set out in the officer report. In summary, the principal development is not acceptable due to the proposed kennelling of dogs on the site, which is likely to have a significant impact on the adjacent Dorset heathlands. There will be an adverse impact on the greenbelt from proposed inappropriateness and loss of openness and encroachment into the countryside. There are no very special circumstances to outweigh this substantial harm. Social benefits have been recognised as you can see on the last point there, but can be given limited weight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please provide the presentation.
Thank you, James. We'll move on to public representation. I've got 3 speakers on this application. The first is Roger Hicks. Thank you, Mr. Hicks. If you can just press the button on the microphone, and your 3 minutes will start when you start, and my Vice Chairman will give you a warning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Roger Hicks. I'm a neighbour of the proposed development, and I would like to object on the grounds of pollution of the conservation area, increased traffic levels, and increased noise levels. Much of this has been covered by the officer in charge, so I'm going to adjust my comments. I'm going to start with the flood risk. One of the mitigations of the flood risk, when the access track could be flooded, because it's a high-level flood risk that the access track goes through, is to use a southerly approach to get to the proposed development site. That southerly approach goes through my land. I own that southerly approach. I live in Lions Hill Farm, which is a neighbour of Little Lions Farm. They would have to ask my permission. I would have to grant that permission. The rest of the southerly approach is owned by 2 other landowners. They would also have to give permission for access in times of flood. So that's a major consideration. The second item I'd like to cover is the nature of the activities that are at the proposed site. Shortly after Waggy Tails bought Little Lions Farm, an advert appeared on their Facebook page, which advertised outside enclosures at the farm for dog training, agility training, and off-lead exercise. The intent clearly was for external people to bring their dogs and enjoy the facilities there and then go home again. These would be a loading of dogs in addition to the 30-odd dogs that would be housed at the site. And that additional load with access to the protected heathlands, would clearly increase the loading on the heathland, increase the volume, and increase the access over the single and made up track. What hasn't been mentioned as well is that the site, as well as being adjacent to the Lions Hill conservation area,
30 seconds.
is just 200 metres from the Moors River SSSI on the eastern side. So there's another site of special scientific interest, which is in close proximity to this, which I think needs to be taken into account as well. So that's my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Next speaker is Paul Chapman.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for your time. As a supporter of Waggy Tales, I just wanted to give you some background information for your perusal for when you make your decisions. So far this year, Waggy Tales have received near on 600 calls to rehome dogs that have been abandoned. Due to our capacity at our existing premises, we've only been able to take in 130. That leaves a shortfall of 470 dogs. Who's going to pick up the slack? Some of these dogs will end up in the pound. After a period of time, they face being euthanised. What services do Waggy Tales provide the community? Well, we provide food and veterinary support to people who are struggling, especially after COVID, and with finances at the moment to continue to pay for their dog's treatment. We provide food to food banks, and we also provide support to other rescues who are in need of food and other assistance. The move to Little Lions Farm would increase our capacity. It would provide land for the staff and the volunteers to help socialise dogs better, and also provide better training, and hopefully mean we can turn around the rehoming of dogs quicker. This would reduce the shortfall, and I do believe that they would have a negative impact on the local community. I've been an insurance broker for Waggy Tales for 20 years, and providing insurance for an animal rescue is not easy. It's at the higher end of the liability scale for an insurance company. But in those 20 years, I've never had a problem getting quotes for Waggy Tales or comparative quotes from market. This is because the risk management, the health and safety, the training of staff, and everything that's put in place at the charity ticks all the boxes from an insurance company point of view. And in those 20 years, they've never had an insurance claim or had reason to notify me of an incident which could give rise to a claim, which I think backs up how well the charity is managed and how well it will be managed if they get the move to Little Lions Farm. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Final speaker on this topic is Richard Osborne.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. As you've heard, the proposals seek to create a new, larger home for Waggy Tales Rescue, a charity which provides emergency accommodation and rehoming services for animals. They've outgrown their existing premises near Wimborne, and sadly, the need for emergency accommodation is showing no signs of abating. We've worked closely with the planning department over the last 18 months by seeking pre-application advice and by providing additional information where requested. Consequently, the officer's report concludes that the proposals will not have an adverse impact on the surrounding landscape, neighbouring amenity, surface water drainage, highway safety, or local biodiversity. However, we strongly disagree with the reasons given for recommending refusal. Extensions are allowed in the Greenbelt where they're not disproportionate additions. Unhelpfully, there is no definition of what is disproportionate. We have shown that the proposed extension enlarges the existing barn by 61%, and we conclude that this is not a disproportionate addition, especially when viewed in context. Further, and importantly, when proposed demolitions are taken into account, this falls to 36%. Overall, the proposals will even result in a net reduction of 5% in volume across the entire site. Consequently, we consider the proposals will not harm the objectives of the Greenbelt, especially given that it is likely that part of this site may soon be defined as grey belt. In addition, the proposals will have no demonstrable adverse impact on the heathlands. The charity's dogs will not be walked there. The charity has been located adjacent to the heathland for over 25 years and chooses not to walk their dogs there for welfare reasons. The application site has been acquired because of the extensive land, which will enable the charity to walk the dogs on their own land. The submitted management plan requires dogs to be on leads at all times. The risk of escape or harm to the heathlands is negligible. If the land is sold back to agriculture, unsupervised sheep or cattle are far more likely to harm the heathland in the event of escape. The applicant has done everything right. They've engaged with the relevant authorities and key stakeholders from an early stage and sought advice from the planning department. They've listened to local concerns. There is clear support from the public in the form of the petition with over 2,500 signatures. We consider that the benefits of the proposal comfortably outweigh any perception of harm to the green belt and any potential risks to the heathland in the future. Therefore, I hope you can support the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osborne.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite the officers to respond to any of the comments they've heard before we throw it open to the committee. So, Mr. Brightman. Yeah.
It's not in relation to what the people have said, I'm afraid, but it's just I forgot to say there was an additional letter of support from Wildlife Rescues received yesterday. Joe.
Thank you. So no particular response to the
just to say, in response to the query about whether the proposals are proportionate or disproportionate, officers have taken into account the volume of the buildings that are to be extended, and it's noted that there's 2 agricultural structures that are to be removed, but because they're agricultural, they don't count as previously developed land, so we don't have the opportunity to consider them under the other exception, which one might normally expect, where we would look at whether the overall openness of the greenbelt is impacted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Having heard all of that, you can open it up to the committee for any questions to start with. Anybody want to go first? Councillor Bretton.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I thought I'd like to kick it off, something at the start. Although this is a rural situation, I'm slightly confused about scale. There isn't actually one on the file, so you can't quite work out how wide this area is. If the red area includes the field, and that is quite wide, and we're told it's 6 hectares or 5.8. How wide is this Lions Hill SSI alongside it? I think the other slide was more helpful. And how many houses, how many properties are on the other side? That's the one I like. If you draw a circle, there seems to be an awful lot of properties on Ashley Heath, even though this part is relatively rural. How many footpaths go out from the Ashley Heath side onto the Lions Hill SSI? Therefore, how many other people quite naturally walk their dogs on Heath? I am concerned that we're becoming slightly anti-dog. I mean, there's an awful lot of, you can't take them here, you can't take them there. Now, I don't think there's a law that says you cannot walk your dog across an SSI if you're a private citizen. So it would seem I just wonder how many footpaths go out, and do we know what sort of traffic, shall we say, dog walkers already have on the Lions Hill SSI?
Thank you. If you've got any response to that, perhaps it's worth officers explaining the normal sort of 400-metre rule in terms of houses near an SSI, protected heathland, as part of that response.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. But there is the Dorset Heathlands Planning Framework is a document we look to assess impact on heathlands, and in there it's been accepted that 400 metres, anything within 400 metres, naturally we intend to object to. They had to draw the line somewhere. 400 metres is that line. 400 metres to 5k, you have to provide mitigation, or you don't get your development within 400 metres. Anything over 5k, it's fine. It's just a bit of an inexact science, but that's what they've landed on with all the research they've done and looking at the pressure on the heathlands. So that's the policy we have to look at, which is linked to our policy NE2 and NE1. So although these houses are right next to the heathlands, they predate the tightening up of the heathland policy and the increasing pressure from these mainly housing areas that they've developed over the years. It just so happens that most of the heathlands are right next to housing, but we don't want to increase the impact on these areas and degrade them even further. So the cumulative impact with this proposal plus everything else that's going on within 400 metres has potential for significant impact.
Yeah, just to add to that, so to answer Councillor Brenton's question, there's about 220 metres across that purple slice, as it were, and yes, James has said the development in Ashley Heath was pre-existing, and the intention of the Dorset Heathlands Planning Framework is to both identify the opportunities where mitigation can be taken to avoid cumulative significant impacts and effects on the integrity of heathland. But also this 400 metres idea has arisen, like James said, from the evidence that Natural England has accumulated over the years, and it's about the distance that people will walk and the distance that animals will predate. But I would just say that the problem here is that we have a very high bar that is set, originally set by the European courts, but adopted by the British courts following Brexit. And the high bar means that officers have to take the precautionary principle into account, and we can only allow development where we are satisfied that there is evidence that there will not be harm. And that is a very high bar, which is why officers have been unable to positively conclude the appropriate assessment, because we fully appreciate all the well-intentioned things that have been provided in terms of the management plan, but regrettably in this circumstance that's not something we can enforce, because as you say, there is no law to stop people from walking their dogs on the heath. So unless somebody is stood on the heath watching what's happening and who's coming and going and being able to identify which dogs come from where, we can't enforce a management plan that says that they won't walk dogs on the heath for the lifetime of the proposed use.
Thank you. So, Councillor Brenton, does that answer your question?
I actually asked where the paths were on the SSSI.
Through you, Chair. There are no public rights of way on that northern part. There's a right of way that goes across from Lyons Lane and around Lyons Hill, right by Lyons Farm, which is, James will point it out, around there.
Roughly here.
But there is open access across that heathland.
There is open access.
Thank you. So can I just clarify, if the rules that existed today were in force when large parts of the settlement at Ashley Heath were built, they would not be given planning permission. So those streets that run adjacent to the protected heathland would not get planning permission today.
Within the 400 metres, 400 metres is the critical zone.
Yeah, and then within 5 kilometres, there needs to be mitigation. Okay. Do I have anybody else wishing to ask a question from the committee? Anybody wish to launch into a debate on this or have anything to say? No? So in that case, Councillor Brinton.
I think it's terribly wrong that we don't have some sort of debate, and I find it hard to believe my fellow councillors haven't got opinions. My opinion is, or my comment is, have we a planning commission, a condition that enforces a dog-proof fence all the way round this proposal? I mean, sure, they say there will be, but would it be a planning condition that there was a dog-proof fence all the way around? It seems to me that 6 hectares is the size that sands are being put on in my ward, you know, as a healthy place to walk. It doesn't sound unlikely that one could keep your dog quite happily on 6 hectares. So I just wonder.
But to impose a condition, it would have to be necessary. One of the conditions reasonable and forcible and necessary. So the necessary, it wouldn't meet Natural England's requirements to have a fence around there, because anyone could walk the dog from the site, just walk out of the gate. Sort of the dog's on the site, actually getting there, but Wagging Tails would already have them on leads or be closely supervised. But it wouldn't stop, it wouldn't prevent the impact on the heathland, because because of the walks you could do from that side, and the lack of any enforcement or any policing you could do. That answers the question, Councillor.
Councillor Trent.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, I do think that there is a serious need for what is proposed, and I personally strongly approve of this use. I must say that I wish we were always as protective of the countryside and the green belt as we appear, as the officers are in the report that is before us. I think far too often we make exceptions, but it is a very good use, a necessary use. Unfortunately, it's in the wrong place. And I have to be consistent with my former attitudes towards development in the countryside and the need to protect it and to protect the green belt. I think we're going to have quite a few battles coming up in that respect. I do regret that for the reasons I've given, I can't support this very necessary use in this place.
Thank you, Councillor Trice. I'd like a question of my own, if I may. We talked earlier about the heathland and mitigation, which quite often takes the form of a SAN, suitable alternative natural green space. And of course, the purpose of a SAN is normally set out to provide a space for people to walk their dogs on, which is not on the heathland. I'm just wondering, obviously this site is not on the SSSI on the heathland, but it is immediately adjacent. Do we have cases where there are SANs which are designed for dog walking, or specifically there to allow dog walking to happen, that close to any other heathland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure about the proximity. I'm not aware of any that this close. But part of the SAN is to provide a certain distance of loop for dogs, for walking, for general walking, recreation. And it should be suitably attractive to make members of the public use it in preference to the natural heathland. That's the general idea, but they do have a route of a couple of miles for dogs to be able to walk, but I'm not aware of anything this close. They shouldn't be this close, otherwise there's too much choice.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brightman. Councillor Flower.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Flower, Verwood Ward. I think we need to split the provision from the location. I think the key issue for me, having listened to the officers' report and comments by members of the public and read the report quite thoroughly, and recognising the fact that Natural England have come out and objected, and they are the custodians of Clause 46 the Habitats Regulations, which produced in 2006 the habitats rules around 400 metres and 5 kilometres and so on. And mitigation is not an elimination of harm, it's a recognition of harm. And although things are in the application that tries to mitigate the potential impact, I don't think they're sufficient to override some of the key issues that have been very well set out in the report. So on that basis, Chairman, I'm prepared to move the refusal as set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Do we have any further members wishing to speak? Councillor Salary-House.
So I think when we're talking about mitigation and the 400 metres and the 5 kilometres, and we talk about SANG as mitigation, we're not talking about the provision of silt, which is also mitigation between the 400 metres and the 5 kilometres. And looking at the Ashley Heath conurbation there, had this come to us as the new development, then there would have been a significant contribution to silt, which would have actually sought to, well, there would have been a silt tax on all of those properties, and that would have helped mitigate and provide infrastructure for people to not access the heat. So it is what it is. We've got it. We absolutely agree with Councillor Flower. We need to separate our feelings from the just cause of the charity, which is well known locally and wider afield for the necessary and good work that it does. It's no reflection on the stature in the community of the charity provision. However, there are significant frustrations to this application. As we've heard, there's ME1, HE3, KS2, PC4, the proportionality of the development, the MPPF Greenbelt policy, Natural England's comments regarding SSI, the proximity of the Ramsar site, and general impact on the Greenbelt, and the sustainability of their existing site. We understand there are 14 areas of Greenbelt in the country. The bit that we fall in is the only piece of Greenbelt on the south coast. So it's precious. So on that basis, I cannot support this application. I do support the aims and goals of the charity, and I would recommend that they look at their existing site for further development. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salary-House. Are you seconding the proposal to
Yes,
refuse?
content.
So we have a proposal to reject and support the officer's recommendation. This has been seconded. Before we go to the vote, I'll just pause and see if there's any other comments from the committee. Anybody wish to say anything? Councillor Skeets.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Skeets, West Mawson and Trickett's Cross. Sorry, I beg your pardon, Three-Legged Cross. I know that the applicant or the Waggy Tales is very well known in my area. They're very active, as some of the people that started up at the organisation are. They have an extremely good reputation locally, and they do a very good job. I think on this particular application, it seems that the place chosen is the problem. It isn't anything to do with the charity or what they do, because I think people are very sympathetic to it. But I do have a couple of questions, if I may, James. One is that on the petition, which I haven't seen, but obviously was signed by a lot of people, on there, was there anything within that petition that changes your report or impacts on your report in any way?
Through the chair, no, Councillor. The nature objection in Tracy, where they supported it because it was better accessibility and facilities that were to be provided. Waggy Tales provided a comprehensive mitigation plan. There was ample space with a controlled environment, proactive community and environmental engagement by Waggy Tales. There was an urgent need for better facilities. That's just a summary of the petition, why it was signed. And it was 2,500 signatures.
Thank you. Thank you. If I could come back, on the one of the gentlemen that spoke about the Moors River and the sensitivity of that in terms of the impact on the environment. Is that something that maybe should have be considered as well?
That is a triple SI. It's not a special it's conservation, I think, but it's part of the considerations that Natural England looked at. Although it wasn't specifically mentioned, but they generally say that Dorset heathlands. But it is close, but it's not as easy to access as the Lions Hill.
Okay. Thank you, James. Anybody, any more, as they say? Councillor Coombs.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Coombs, Burwood Ward. I've been thinking about some of the comments that have been made, and the question I've got actually is about the potential of external users coming to access the site for agility. It was mentioned by one of the public speakers, and I think when we saw the site plan, it did mention an agility space. I just wondered if I could have a feeling for the impact of that, given the concerns about the increased use on the site, the proximity to the heathland and so on.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. That's not part of the proposal. It may have happened, and we didn't know anything about it, but it's certainly not part of the planning proposal. If it was, we'd have to assess the impact on traffic mainly, and the potential impact on Heathland from that use. We need to know numbers. So it wasn't part of our assessment.
So following on from that, would that require a further application if they wanted to add that diversity,
yes,
if they were given permission?
Well, the only way it could be lawful if the permission is given is if it's ancillary use. But my view, it probably wouldn't be ancillary because it's a rehoming centre, not a training centre. The officers would have to make that judgment.
Thank you for that. That was actually quite useful. However, I've looked at concerns about the green belt. I don't have as much concern because I think the development affecting the green belt isn't so great given the previous use of the site. However, for me, the key element is the protected heathland, and I've not heard anything that would surmount that, and that to me is the biggest hurdle, and I don't think they can overcome that, and I'll be supporting the proposal for refusal.
Okay, thank you. I've seen no more hands waving for urgent attention. So in which case we'll move to the vote. The proposal is made by Councillor Flower and seconded by Councillor Sarry-House that we approve the officer's report and refuse this application. Can I have a show of hands for those in favour of that refusal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make it 8, 4. Those against, 1, and those abstaining. So this application P4 2023-05479 is refused. Right, we'll have a short break whilst the officers change over for the next case. If people are leaving, if they could do so reasonably quietly, it'd be appreciated.
Maybe supporters that they want sort of engagement. Very motivated. Oh yes, and I'm in principle almost for what they do. I think our attitude towards animals is abysmal.
Well, hello, our principle, absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's an location of in
the wrong place. Yes, simple as that.
No, I'm sure she would.
You've got, oh, you've got to.
This is it. They really want to get rid of the thing.
That's your percentage of this, aren't you? Right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can probably move on with the next application, which is agenda item number 7, which is P4 2023-02520, land adjacent to 142 Ringwood Road, Langham, Ferndown. Presentation will be by Liz Adams, who will be doing most of the rest of the presentations, I understand. So thank you, Liz. Same as before, presentation, public speakers, questions and debate.
Yeah. So this proposal before you is for the erection of 2 dwellings. 17 objections have been received together with objections from the Town Council. These and the material considerations are set out in the officer's report. And the application site is in Longham, which is a village south of the urban area of Ferndown. The application site lies adjacent to the development in the village of Longham. Policy KS2 directs new development to settlements where there is the best access to infrastructure, services and facilities. So within the settlement hierarchy, Longham is identified as a village where only limited development will be allowed that supports the role of the settlement as a provider of services to its own community. As set out in the officer report, although the proposed location is adjacent to the village, which offers only limited services, it also has relatively good access to additional facilities in Ferndown to the north, and it's on a bus route. Officers consider that this is actually a sustainable location for development. The village of Longham and the application site lies within the Greenbelt south of Ferndown. The East Dorset local plan adopted in 2002 identified a village infill area for Longham, which is shown here in this sort of pinky purple colour. And in this area, development that is of a scale and character that respects existing village form can be permitted under policy GB7 that was saved by the current local plan. Now, the majority of the application site in this case lies beyond the village infill area, so it can't rely on policy GB7. But more recently, the National Planning Policy Framework has identified that limited infilling in villages can be an exception to the general rule that new buildings are not allowed in the Greenbelt. The courts have found that a village boundary, as defined in the local plan, may not be determinative for the purposes of deciding whether a site is located within a village. We have to consider the context and the character of the area. Appeal decisions have also clarified that when considering whether development is limited infilling in villages, we have to consider the nature and the size of the development itself and its context. So this application site has been previously used for storage, and there's some very dilapidated Nissen hut down here, which is to be removed as another building that's already gone. The proposal before you is for the erection of 2 dwellings north of these 4 dwellings at the old post office. Within the village context, the 2 dwellings is judged to be limited. So here's some photos to provide you with context. To the south of the application site is this cluster of 4 dwellings known as the old post office cottages. You can see here on the main road and then to the rear. To the north is a semi-detached pair, number 142 and 144 Ringwood Road. This is a Google image which shows the site that lies behind this. It looks large here, but it's quite a relatively small car park that serves the White Hart Public House on the other side of the road here. The development will continue the linear form which the which is characteristic of Longham. Properties have a varying degree of setback from the highway. The eastern boundary of the gardens would align with those of 142, 144, which are back onto this allotment here. Within the context of the village form, officers have judged that the proposal represents limited infill in a village and therefore is not inappropriate development in the green belt. The two dwellings each have 4 bedrooms. House 1, this is to the south, it has the gable end, and that follows the style of the local properties. Red clay facing bricks are proposed with slate style roof tiles and black metal windows. This is house number 2, which takes a more sort of barn type form. Both dwellings include solar panels and conservation style roof lights. The design was amended during the course of the application in correspondence with the council's conservation and planning officer to ensure that there was no harm to the setting of the neighbouring listed buildings, which you see here. So the development site provides the context for the White Hart Public House, which is opposite, and the old post office, which you see here, which are both Grade 2 listed buildings. Numbers 142 and 144 to the north are also judged to be non-designated heritage assets. The site is distant enough from Longham United Reformed Church not to affect, and the manse next door not to affect the setting of those buildings. And it's considered that the revised design provides a proposal that's architecturally and visually compatible with its surrounding development and that won't harm the significance of the heritage asset, so it calls in policy 81. This is an elevation for you from the allotments to the east. There are trees on the site needing to be protected during construction and would be subject to a condition if you grant permission. No harm to the neighbouring amenity is anticipated due to the linear nature of the development, sort of side onto each other, and the separation distances of about 20 metres. Ringwood Road is obviously a very busy road. Concerns have been raised about increasing the traffic that's coming on and off that highway, but the proposal will use the existing access that serves post office cottages down here with appropriate visibility. A construction traffic management plan is proposed, which can be secured by condition. And there's been discussion with the fire authority because building control raised an issue about the access which goes over the stream here. But building control, the fire authority are satisfied that sprinkler systems would be appropriate to secure the future safety of any residents. Due to the issue with the access, it's also proposed to rely upon private refuse collection, so that's another condition that's proposed. Another issue was flood risk, so it's in an area susceptible to high groundwater levels according to the council's strategic flood risk assessment, but borehole testing has been done over the winter period to confirm that the levels are such that the site is not at risk, and a condition would secure appropriate surface water management. So in summary, the main consideration before you is whether the proposal is village infill. It's your officer's consideration that it is, and therefore it is acceptable within the green belt. And although outside the identified village infilling area in 2002, it's considered to be a sustainable location for 2 dune dwellings. In all other respects, the application has been found acceptable, and therefore the recommendation is to grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. We've got one public speaker on this, which is the applicant or agent, who is Charles Moyer. Charles, you have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. So our Vice Chairman will alert you when you're close to the end. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the application on behalf of the applicants. In terms of the background to the proposal, prior to submitting the formal application, the applicants engaged with the Town Council, attending one of their evening meetings. This was to seek their views on the proposal. The design has evolved to address these comments and the feedback that was received from the Town Council. It's also pleasing to see that there have been letters of support submitted with regard to this application. As you've heard, the application sits to the east of Ringwood Road and is adjacent to the old post office and opposite the White Hart Inn, both of which are Grade 2 listed. There is an existing access from Ringwood Road, and the proposal will utilise this access point. And as you've seen, this is shown on the proposed layout. The council's highways officers are supporting the proposed access, and I don't consider there to be any highway dangers in terms of the use of that access. Objections have been made to the application on the basis that the site is within the Greenbelt. It's important to reiterate that the NPPF allows within the Greenbelt for limited infilling of villages. This proposal for 2 units is just that, limited infilling. In addition, when assessing the contribution that the site makes to the openness of the Greenbelt, it's important to consider that the site is currently occupied by a storage building, which is in a poor state of repair. And the wider site appears, as you've seen from the photograph, to be in an untidy condition. As such, given the site's wider context within the village of Longham, it can be concluded that the site does not make a valued contribution to the openness of the Greenbelt, and therefore does not conflict with the purposes of including land within the Greenbelt. The proposal constitutes an efficient use of land taking place at an appropriate density and making optimal use of the site. The site constitutes brownfield land, the acceptability of which and the importance of which to deliver homes is made clear within the NPPF. Having regard to the relationships within the development itself, the units have been designed to ensure good levels of amenity for future residents, with side windows being proposed either at high level or serving secondary rooms. There's a good level of separation distances between the properties, and suitable boundary treatments are proposed in the form of native hedging and post and rail fencing. The application site lies to the north of the post office, with the White Hart Inn on the opposite side of the road. The dwellings being of an appropriate low-level scale to not interrupt views of the heritage assets, and the proposed development, when viewed from these heritage assets, would not result in harm or detract from the importance that these assets play. Officers consider the site to be accessible and in a sustainable location. Future occupants will be able to access services and facilities on a regular basis by means of walking, cycling or public transport. As confirmed in your officer's report, the proposal will not impact upon the amenity of neighbouring residents, and following the submission of amended plans, the conservation officers confirmed their support for the proposal, and as you've heard, your highways officer raises no objection. I hope you're able to support your officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Do the officers wish to respond to any comments made? No. I'm going to start again with questions. I've got one of my own to start with, if I may, which is, as I understand the area, there's a recycling centre just a little bit further along the road on the other side of the river. And we'll talk about traffic. That's obviously a pull for traffic. What sort of impact might that have?
So the recycling centre lies beyond the border in BCP, and but I don't think that's the only reason why the road is busy. It is a key key through road for traffic travelling from the conurbation north, isn't it? So we're looking here at 2 dwellings, so the trip rates associated with that are not going to be significant in terms of contributing to already busy roads.
Okay, and the proximity of the recycling centre, noise, smells.
At least 1.3 kilometres, so we don't have concerns in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coombs.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Tony Coombs, Burwood Ward. Given that the parish council objection was about the Greenbelt, and I see that the proposal benefits from the exception 154 little e of the NPPF, that it can be classed as village infill development. Can I ask why this has come to committee, please?
It's come to committee because the parish council objected and the officer's recommendation is to approve. Thanks. Councillor Brenton was next, and I've got Andy Skeets.
My question is, this is a very busy road. What pedestrian crossings are there on this road? I was going to say, it says somewhere in the notes, easy access to the pub. Well, unless you're going to kill yourself, it seems a bit of a dodgy place. Is that line where your arrow, is that a zebra crossing? Okay.
Through you, Chair, it's a pedestrian crossing with traffic lights.
Okay, so it's traffic light control. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we've got Councillor Spencer Flower, followed by Councillor Andy Skeets.
Thank you, Chairman. Spencer Flower, Burwood Ward. I go back, pick up on the point about, I've just looked at the Ferndown Town Council objections. First of all, I'm going to ask an open question about, is there anything material in there? So I'm struggling. A lot of opinion. I don't see material. And because the question about the sewage arrangements, is it main sewage or is it private? Perhaps I can have an answer to that. But my main concern is if it's come here because of the objection from the parish council, town council in this case, is it based on material planning considerations or opinion? Thank you.
Yes.
Through you, Chair. So the concerns raised that flagged up material considerations to me were the green belt, the concern about it being cramped and excessive in scale, and the parking. So all of those are material considerations as set out in the report. In terms of the arrangements for sewage, I would anticipate that it can achieve mains because of its proximity to the village, but that's not something that I have before me.
Thank you. Councillor Skeets.
Andy Skeets, West Morsden, Three-Legged Cross. I think from the town council rather than parish council, I think it burned down. Is that the council or is it a local?
I think it's a town council officially, but of course town councils are parish councils in legal terms anyway.
Okay, they mentioned in particular the fire vehicles access to the site, and I realise there's only a couple of buildings there, so I think I read within the structure of the what was put before us that there was some mitigation on fire alarm systems or something like that, and we're quite satisfied that meets the requirements as far as we're concerned, is my question.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, so obviously that element of the development is controlled by building regulations, but at the planning stage we want to be certain that there is a route forward, because otherwise there's no point granting planning permission and they can't build it. So there has been discussion with the fire authority, and they're satisfied that there is a way to meet the building regulations using sprinkler systems in this instance.
Okay. As a secondary to that, does that mean we will follow that up when the final detail is produced for the build?
Yeah. So building regulations is commercial, so it depends if they use us or a registered inspector, but either way, yes, it will be.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that answered? Any other one?
Yes.
Any more questions? Councillor Barry Gorringe.
Councillor Barry Gorringe, St Leonard's. Can you just clarify the access to the site? Is it that white area there? That's it. That's the access, right? Now, the grey area, that looks like a little lane going up farther the road. What's that? No, to the left. That lane there. No, yeah, there. What is that? A lane?
So that's the car park I spoke about, which serves the White Hart. And actually, more recently, I noticed they put up some fencing to try and discourage people from parking on it.
Yeah, I'm looking behind. I'm looking behind that.
Oh, down here.
No, to the right.
The right.
There, just there. What's that?
Yeah, that's the stream.
That's the stream.
It goes across the street, and that's where they had the issue with the accessibility for fire brigade and bin noise.
The other thing is, I noticed in the report it says that the bins will be emptied by a private contractor. So can the lorry that empties those bins get onto that side bar that lane? Is it wide enough?
Yeah. So that's the purpose of having the private bin collection, because our Dorset Council lorries are too big, and people would need to pull their bins right out to the front, and that is
We don't want them
not
on the
going to
road.
work. So they're going to have a private collection for these two, unfortunately.
Can I ask a question based on, is there going to be a management charge of that, to which any residents would need to contribute, or how is that organised? Is it relevant?
So because it's only 2 dwellings in this instance, I would anticipate that would be a private arrangement. If it was more dwellings, then we would be looking for a management plan. But in this case, you've got 2 pretty discrete dwellings that can make their own arrangements.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any more questions or thoughts? Move on. So in that case, do we have someone who's willing to propose? Councillor Flower.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Flower, Verwood Ward. For the reasons set out in the report, I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Coombs.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm more than happy to support the proposal to grant. There are no material planning considerations that would prevent that, particularly given the provisions in the NPPF. I'm in full support.
Thank you. If there's no, yeah, okay. Councillor Sally House.
Very happy to support this. Something that I found, so maybe a note for the agent to take consideration. It was really good to see the not just the sustainable location, which I believe it is, but also the sustainability of solar panels on the roof. This is not a requirement at the moment, but it is very much a desire of mine and many on this committee to see that forward-thinking infrastructure going in on homes. So I'm grateful for that, and that's added to my mindfulness to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Sally House. Before we move to the vote, if anyone wants to make any further comments or ask questions, no. In that case, we've got a proposal to accept the officer's report and to approve this application. Can we have a show of hands for those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And any against? 1. And no abstentions there because
Full house.
Full house, yeah. So in that case, application P4 2023-02520, land adjacent to 142 Ringwood Road, Longham, Ferndown, is approved. Thank you. So again, we'll have a slight pause whilst the officers swap around. Except that was quick. Okay, so if we move on now to agenda item 8, which is P4 2024-00324, land at Oak Tree Paddock, Bachelors Lane, Holtwood or Wimborne, which will be presented by Liz Adams.
Yeah, the case officer in this instance has now left the authority. So the proposal is to convert an existing building into a dwelling house, and we're looking up further north this time in the Holtwood region. The building lies at the end of Bachelors Lane, to the east of Linden Hill Farm and north of Anchor Paddock. It is a rural location within the woodlands area of Great Landscape Valley. That's this sort of blue colour here on the plan. This valued landscape is characterised by long views with wooded horizons, open, gently rolling countryside and woodlands, and well-treed hedgerows which enclose the settlement. There is a public right of way that runs along Bachelor's Lane up north, and you get very lovely views of Horton Tower, which is a building and a notable landmark. Again, policy KS2 is relevant. Again, directing development to sustainable locations, which I would say this is not. However, it's silent about the reuse of existing buildings. So it's been necessary to consider the proposal against the National Planning Policy Framework. And paragraph 84 of that document identifies that isolated dwellings in the countryside should be avoided unless one of the listed exceptions is met. In this case, the building would reuse a disused building. Sorry, the proposal would reuse a disused building, and officers consider that on balance it would enhance the setting and can therefore benefit from the exception at paragraph 84. Here we see the existing floor plan and the proposed. So at the moment it's divided up into sort of stalls, and it's anticipated that those would be revised to create a 4-bedroom property with the living area in this wing. A structural survey accompanied the application, which confirmed that the building is mainly concrete masonry unit walls on a concrete base with a timber frame and clad at the moment with corrugated sheeting and wooden planking. So it's judged that the building is suitable for conversion. There are no permitted development fallback options because the building was not last in use for agriculture. This is the front elevation. And you can see that the conversion will reuse the existing openings, and the building is to be reclad in wood, thereby maintaining the rural character. There's no solar panels in this case, but air source heat pumps are proposed. And due to the quiet rural location, a condition to secure noise details has been suggested. I also, while we've got this, it's quite small, but just shows that there are 2 other existing sort of outbuilding type structures which are proposed to be retained to serve the new dwelling as ancillary structures. In the officer report at 16.17, we did mention that there were no windows facing the pasture land to avoid harm to the setting of Horton Tower. Now, those amongst you with keen eyes will see that this is not the case. That actually, in a minute. So just to point out that this window here is in the east wing, so it is away from the pasture land. But when we look at the rear, there is this window here, which is to serve an ensuite. So it's not anticipated that that would be constantly lit, and it's unlikely to have, therefore, any significant impact. There are 2 conservation roof lights proposed and a couple of flat roof lights on the corridor element at the back. But overall, the impact of the modest fenestration has been judged to be acceptable in relation to the setting of Horton Tower, which is 250 metres to the northeast. So here are some photos of the building. This is the front elevation. We see here the east wing. That's the back of the east wing. The new building is evident from the public right of way. So this is to the north here, looking back down towards the building. New hedgerow planting can be secured via landscaping condition to reintroduce that characteristic boundary treatment. These are the 2 outbuildings I spoke about earlier. Not in great quality, but they're sufficiently substantial that they could be renovated, and that would serve future occupiers without then the need for additional outbuildings. You can see the building benefits from a discrete setting up at the end of the private track with few passing places. So neighbours have raised concerns about traffic. The existing use is equestrian, so it's judged that one dwelling is unlikely to result in significant increase in the trip rates after the construction period. We appreciate the construction period would be more intensive. The nearest neighbours to the south are an unauthorised barn conversion, and there is also Anchor Paddock, which is an established dwelling, but that I think you can just about see the dormer. Both the dormer and this barn conversion are currently at appeal. But even if they are found to be acceptable and remain, there's no harm to neighbour immunity from the current proposal. The access to the site does impact on the rooting environment of the tree, a big oak tree, which contributes to the character of the area and gives the paddock its name. A tree protection plan has been provided, but the council's tree officer has recommended that further details are needed. So that is another condition that is suggested should you be minded to grant permission. In summary, although contrary to policy KS2, the development benefits from the exception of paragraph 84 of the MPF, as it will reuse a redundant building and secure planting and improved external appearance, which will enhance the setting. All other aspects have been found acceptable, so the officer recommendation is one of approval, and the conditions in this case are set out on page 80 onwards of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one public speaker on this, which is the applicant or agent, Carol Tabers or Tabbers? Trailers.
I'll answer anything, Chairman. Carol Evans.
Okay, Carol, if you take a seat, use the right hand button for the microphone, and Councillor Sally House will let you know when you're 3 minutes in nearly up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Good morning, members. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. It is very much appreciated. Where the local plan is largely silent on the matter of conversion of rural buildings, so we turn to national planning policy for guidance. The NPPF is clear that existing buildings within the Greenbelt can be converted, provided they are of permanent and substantial construction. A structural engineer was consulted early on, and it was confirmed to be the case that the building is suitable for conversion. The design approach we've taken is one of a light touch, to acknowledge the former use of the building by retaining the style of the openings and work as much as possible and practical with the existing features of the building. For example, the bedrooms have external shutters emulating the existing style of barn doors. The open plan kitchen and the lounge benefit from the attractive outlook over the paddock to make sure that this is going to be a quality home. There is no material increase in height, width or depth of the building, so that the openness and spaciousness of the Greenbelt is preserved, a key tenet of Greenbelt policy. We are proposing to clad the existing white painted concrete walls in a timber larch. This is to give the building a much softer appearance in its landscape setting, particularly in relation to any glimpsed views to and from Horton Tower. There is no need for us to remove any trees or hedging on the site. Indeed, we are proposing additional hedging, as set out by your officers, to help soften boundaries and boost, obviously, land biodiversity. We note some of the comments raised in the representations. Just for your clarity, members, services, including water, already exist to the property, so there's no need to cause any disruption to Bachelor's Lane. The proposed dwelling will also be added to the existing private waste collection service that currently serves about half a dozen of the houses along the lane. Chairman, this is a modest proposal that is designed to settle quietly into this well-screened site, the principle of which is in line with current planning policy. I'd like to thank your officers for their well-considered report, and I respectfully request that you see fit to support their recommendation. Thank you for your time, Chairman.
Thank you. Do officers wish to respond to anything that they've heard? No. In which case, I think Councillor Flower just got in there.
Councillor Flower, I've got a question on 9, Natural England. No objection to the mitigation being secured. Can you explain what that is, please? Has it been?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So that's in relation to the appropriate assessment, which has concluded that there will be no harm to the Heatham, which is within 5 kilometres of this site, subject to mitigation. Mitigation is to be secured through the community infrastructure levy, so that will happen post decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Coombs.
Thank you, Councillor Tony Coombs, Burwood. During the office presentation, there was a comment made about flat roof lights along the corridor. Given the location and the proximity to Horton Tower, how would that impact on dark skies?
So this is an area of area of great landscape value, but not part of the A1B with the dark night. Thank you. With the protection, so it's not part of that special zone. So whilst we would try to limit light spill as you know, as far as it's reasonable, in this case, the roof lights allow natural light through, which would reduce the need to be reliant on electric light. And again, it's because it's a corridor rather than the main living area. One would hope that the lights aren't on, that the amount of electric light that's used during the times of darkness would not be significant. I appreciate that that's a hope. So we have to think, actually, if they were on all the time, would these two roof lights, in addition to the two conservation style roof lights, actually have a harmful impact that would justify refusal on that basis? And my officer opinion would be no.
I agree with you that I don't think it's level for refusal. However, there are a lot of modern technologies about now that maybe the applicant could take that comment on board, and whether there's, you know, an electric solution that would then turn those roof lights to obscure during the hours of night when they turn the lights on, that would be a welcome benefit. But as I say, it's not strong enough for a reason for refusal.
If I may, through you, Chair, Councillor Coombs, in the A&B, the A&B team often recommend an informative note that suggests that applicants consider the use of blinds, and we can similarly attach an informative note to this to take that request through if you're minded to approve the application. Thank you.
So if we do get to a certain point where you wish for a proposal, I'll be happy for that to be added as an informative note.
Thank you. I've also known occasions where you've insisted on blinds that can go across roof lights to prevent light spillage in the AO&B. Is it being in the AO&B, is that the only reason to impose such a condition?
So we do have to consider about the enforceability and the reasonableness and whether it would last for the lifetime of the proposal. So it's always a difficult one to weigh up as to whether imposing a condition which requires, for instance, blinds to be shut or electric blinds to be installed that are automatically shut, whether that is a realistic condition to be imposed. In this case, I don't think it's a necessary condition to be imposed.
Thank you. Councillor Brenton.
Councillor Brenton, Litchfield Upton. On, I think it's screen 7 on my computer. When you look at the top plan, little green plan, right at the top of it, you've got the straight line of the building, and then you have the hedge outside, and sort of a strange grey triangle, which doesn't seem to answer the plan shown earlier. What's the distance there? What's the separation between the hedge and the building? And I mean, I can't quite get the scale of this one. Doesn't look very wide.
I don't have that to hand, so I'll just need to look that up.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm sure you'll get an answer in due course.
I'm sure you will. It's just that my observation is, as it's a sort of concrete block building, and you haven't got a lot of, and it's going to be clad, will it, I assume it will have to, under the new regulations, meet the sort of new housing regulations for wall insulation and such like? Because are we turning it into a double-skinned building? Because I just wonder about the sustainability and heating.
Thank you. I would normally expect that building regulations and planning are slightly different beasts. Just because we give planning permission doesn't mean they can build it, and just because they can build it doesn't mean we give planning permission. But other than that,
Just to fill in time. Yeah, I would. There's no proposal to expand the building, so any insulation or additional width of the walls will have to be accommodated within the building. So there's no proposal to change the proximity to the northern boundary. So,
Yes. But if you look on the next one, on 6, on 7, in the straight line.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Are we able to?
Yeah, the internet's been really slow, so apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be because we're on public Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience.
That's okay. Thanks. Are you okay?
Yeah, so just measuring off the plan, we've got 1.9 metres in the narrowest and then 3 metres at the top. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So answer your question.
I'm sure it does answer my question. I was just looking at the plan on slide 6 and the plan on slide 7, and they don't exactly match. So I just wondered. One appears to have a very straight roof line with a sort of lean-to at the back, and the other one, the wall goes all the way out. But I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any more questions? Or
To debate.
yeah.
If we're moving to debate, Chairman, I'm happy to propose the offer recommendation with the additional thought of my.
Okay. Thank you. Any seconder?
Yes, I was happy to second.
Councillor Skeets. Before we move to the votes, anybody have any final comments to make? Final thoughts? No, in that case, we've got a proposal to approve the officer's recommendation. Which has been seconded. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Unanimous. So, P4 2024-00324, in accordance with the officer's recommendation, is approved. Okay. Before we move on, I've got a couple of councillors who have urgent appointments elsewhere where they're going to need to leave between 12 to 30. What I would propose to do in that instance is take a short break now. If those councillors who need to leave to go to, there's various must go to appointments that they have to attend. So we'll take a break here for about half an hour and then come back.
Half an hour?
Oh, that's a bit long. Too long.
A bit long, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, Spencer.
Just to add to that, I've got an online meeting at 3:30 today, which I'm chairing. So it'd be rather useful if I was there.
Yeah. In which case, rather than half hour, we'll take quarter of an hour.
That's better.
Just to
Quarter of an hour.
Quarter of an hour. So 12 o'clock. this committee meeting. We just finished the agenda item 8, so we're moving on to agenda item 9, which is P full 2024-02697, which is a barn opposite Old Quarry Close, Worth Matravers. So if we move on with that, we've got the officers' report, and then, as before, officers' presentation, public speakers, questions, debate, and vote. Any questions? No? Good. Thank you. Please.
Yeah. Okay. So this item is the application site located on the eastern fringe of Worth Matravers, approximately 4 miles to the southwest of Swanage. The barn, which is subject of this application, is particularly prominent in the wider landscape setting due to its edge of village location and the surrounding open landscape character. Some members will be familiar with it from the members' tour that we did a couple of weeks ago, because we drove past. So the application site is located outside the village settlement boundary, which you see here in black, within the Dorset National Landscape. So there's no fallback in relation to permitted development rights to allow conversion of the building. It's also within the Purbeck Heritage Codes and a minerals and waste safeguarding area. The footpath extends northeast from the opposite side of the land in here. Here's some photographs of the context. You see the barn here behind the landscaping boundary. Just as an aside, Old Quarry Close, which you see here, which is an exception site, is not within the settlement boundary. It's the existing building, formerly agricultural, hence the functional appearance, currently understood to be in use for storage. The curtilage is an area of overgrown shrub. The boundaries include post and wire fencing and stone walling. There's a bund that extends around the site to the rear and partly to the sides, and it has an open character, which is agricultural in nature, beyond the site boundary. There's wide open views southwards across the fields towards the coast. And as I said before, the use of the building is commercial storage under use class B. That was secured by a certificate of lawfulness granted in March 2023. The application form for the current application received in May of this year advises that the current use remains as B8. And the site is not currently vacant. So a formal application to convert the barn to form 3 dwellings was refused in April on the grounds of highway impacts and harm to the Dorset National Landscape, resulting from intrusive artificial light pollution into dark night skies. Now, the reasons are set out in full in section 7 of your report. The current application is a resubmission and it seeks to address the previous reasons for refusal. So during the application process, the 2024 Purbeck Local Plan was adopted, and the applicants have sought to meet the new affordable housing and second home policy requirements. A legal agreement has been drawn up to secure affordable housing commuted sum of £114,000 in accordance with Policy H11. At the time of the scheme of delegation consultation, which ended up with the application coming to committee, the lack of 5-year housing land supply and the tilted balance that resulted ended up in favour of sustainable development, and therefore the officer recommendation for the 3 dwellings was one of approval. During the preparation for the committee, on the 26th of September, the Planning Inspectorate's report on the Council's 5-year housing land supply was received, and it was confirmed that Dorset Council has 5.02 years supply for the Dorset area. And as a result, the tilted balance no longer applies. It's a flat balance, and the Council's housing policies are no longer out of date. Now, as a result of this, the officer recommendation has changed to one of refusal, and that's for the reasons set out in the committee report. But we were already committed to bringing this application to the committee, and the letters had already been sent out. So I don't think I've actually said what the proposal is. Sorry, it's for the partial demolition and conversion of this building to form 3 4-bedroom dwellings with landscaping and parking provision. So the site is, as I said, close to the Old Quarry Rail exception site, but it is outside and not adjacent to the settlement boundary. So because the site isn't adjacent to the village settlement, it can't benefit from policy H8 for small developments adjoining the settlement boundary. Policy V1 and other policies in the Purbeck Local Plan are silent on the reuse of existing buildings in the countryside, so it's similar to the previous application you were considering. So again, we look to the NPF. Are there any exceptions to isolated dwellings in the countryside? Now, Wortham Travers is classed as a small village with a limited range of facilities in the local plan settlement hierarchy. The occupants of new homes will be dependent, therefore, on private vehicle to access key facilities and services in Swanage and Corfe and beyond. Even accessing the limited village facilities requires navigating rural roads without consistent pavements. So officers consider that, despite the proximity to the settlement boundary, this is, in the Braintree judgment considerations, an isolated location and not one that's sustainable. So we then look to policy NPF paragraph 84. Are there any exceptions that this could meet? It's reusing an existing building, but in this case, the building isn't redundant or disused, so we don't consider it can benefit from that exception. So in terms of the conversion, the existing building has a simple barn-like structure and it's proposed to partially demolish it. So that would potentially have an improvement on the visual impact. It's going to be recessed. It's actually probably easier looking at this slide, which shows that the existing lean-to elements to be removed and part of this wider lean-to element on the side and a small part of the frontage to provide some architectural interest and to allow windows to be recessed to limit light spill. Within the Dorset National Landscape, you'll be aware that proposals are expected to conserve and enhance the existing natural beauty of the area. A slight aside from that, just to show you that the bedrooms in this case are on the ground floor and they're intending to make use of the lovely views by putting the living accommodation on the first floor. The parish council has objected to the proposal on grounds of size and scale. They've noted that the very high barn-like structure is not a reasonable comparison size and height to justify the residential proposal for three-storey terrace properties. Officers have interpreted that as meaning they were very concerned about the scale, but it is to be noted that this is a reuse of an existing building. It's not a demolish and rebuild, and the overall mass is to be reduced. The existing functional appearance would be retained, but the use of locally sourced materials and natural wood would enhance the external finish, would enable the building to sit more comfortably against the rural landscape. There's also proposed enhancements to the immediate curtilage. Obviously, you've got that scrubland at the moment, including landscaping, park planting. So that would have a positive impact on the character of the area and enhance the natural landscape setting. So in all those aspects, the proposal is now compliant. But there was also the need to consider the new fenestration and potential for the impact that would have on the character of the area, because currently it's just a storage building, so at night it's dark. In this case, the applicants have put forward some general glazing design principles, which have taken their ideas from the South Downs National Park area, and the principles are set out in full in paragraph 16.28 for your agenda, but they include limiting the extent of the proposed glazing, incorporating recessed balconies, no ceiling or roof lights, and the critical difference with the previous application is that visible light transmission would be reduced by using special glazing, which would have a 0.65 transmission or less, which is considered to be a level which is you can achieve without it being overly onerous, but it would reduce the impact of any residential use in this dark area. So overall, officers considered that, subject to conditions, the impact on the Dorset National Landscape could be made acceptable. Other impacts in terms of no harm to neighbouring community, There's a biodiversity plan approved, and the biodiversity net gain requirements for 10% net gain have been met, and there would be informatives on any positive decision that you should choose to make. No harms with flood risk, and again we've got the issue of the Dorset Heathlands, but an appropriate assessment can be positively concluded because the community infrastructure levy can secure the mitigation. In addition, as already mentioned, the applicants said that they will sign up to provide the new affordable housing requirement and accept a condition to restrict the new homes. So it was all lined up for an approval, except that with the change to the tilter balance, we are looking at a situation where to create 3 new dwellings in this location is considered to be unsustainable and doesn't benefit from the exceptions of paragraph 84. So for that reason alone, the application is recommended to you for a refusal.
Thank you, Liz. We've got one public speaker on this, who is the applicant stroke agent, who is Brett Spiller. Turn your microphone on, speak for up to 3 minutes, and Megan will let you know when your 3 minutes are nearly up. Right, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I trust you all received a copy of our short briefing pack bestowing the virtues of the proposal. To this end, I would like to place emphasis on a few of the reasons why you should depart from the officer recommendation and resolve to grant planning permission today, something that you are entitled to do. First, this is an underutilised brownfield site. I have been informed by the applicant that the building is no longer in active storage use, so a slight change from the presentation there. And the building is certainly capable of being repurposed, thereby harnessing embodied carbon. Second, as noted in paragraph 5.1 of the committee report, the existing barn is particularly prominent in the wider landscape. It also sits at the gateway of the village and impacts on the sense of arrival. Paragraph 16.18 of your committee report explains that great weight should be ascribed to enhancing the landscape and scenic beauty of national parks. So it's not merely acceptable, it does need to enhance. And there is consensus that this proposal would deliver a significant betterment. Again, that's explained in the officer report and also demonstrated, I believe, by the photo montage that you've received. This shows how the appearance would be transformed by dissipating the bulk and mass of the building and the use of sensitive materials. You should afford this significant weight in reaching your decision. Third, and as already explained, all of the other technical issues have been addressed. Indeed, the changeable interpretation of the spatial distribution policy would appear to be the sole issue here. As set out at paragraph 6.6 of your committee report, policy V1 is silent on the reuse of existing buildings in the countryside, so very similar to the last application you were considering. However, other policies in the plan do take a more permissive approach to things such as conversion to holiday accommodation. And members, I would ask you to consider whether you'd rather see 3 new homes to be permanently occupied here, or whether you prefer to see the prospect of short-term holiday lets in the village. This is not a contentious application. There have been no objections from local residents. I suspect that residents took the stark appearance of the existing barn, see that every time they enter the village, and long for enhancement. Whilst not objecting, the ward councillor Ben Wilson did seek comfort in respect of affordable housing to ensure that that's properly applied, and also restrictions in terms of second home occupation. Again, the applicants conformed with that, and I believe your case officer has also explained that. We do believe that this would benefit from paragraph 84 of the NPPF, as say it is now a vacant building, and for the reasons that I've explained, would ask for your support in approving this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Would officers like to comment on anything that's just been said?
Only to say that it's taken board that it's now vacant, but I don't think it's that clear whether it's disused and redundant. That's the requirement under the NPPF.
Thank you. So we'll take it to the committee. Anybody got any questions they wish to ask? Councillor Brenton.
Might as well kick it off again. Councillor Brenton, Litchfield Upton. It's just a point of clarification. On this particular slide, slide 16, just behind the welcome to Worthing Travers sign, is that a barn on the left-hand side, or is that agricultural, or is that a barn conversion?
Through you, Chair, that's a really good question. I've always just assumed it's a barn, but it could be an equestrian use. I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Okay. To be really awkward then, can I go back to slide 8? This is just to get my head into it. Okay. Picture 4. What angle is that at somehow? So it goes down the side of the road, basically. So is that the barn of the new affordable houses?
Correct.
Right. So as we approach, I'm just trying to remember, I've been down there for a week or two. As we approach from Acton coming down in, we have what looks like a small barn on one side and the much bigger barn, which I know, on the right-hand side. That is the entrance to the village. Enough questions.
Okay.
Come back later.
Do you need to say anything, Liz? Any further questions? You're very question free. Does anybody have any comments to make? Any thoughts? No? In that case,
Yes, officer recommendation, Chairman.
that's proposal to vote, yeah? Seconder?
You think so?
Spencer Power. Any further comments? And if there's no further comments, we'll go straight to the vote. Councillor Florrick.
Councillor Florrick, Corfmullen. Just a clarification. If this property was disused and redundant in 6 months' time, and we come back here, would it be approved at that point?
Thank you, Dieter. So it's each application on its merits at the time that we make the decision.
Okay. No further questions. We've had a. Sorry, can you just repeat the proposal, please? So we're very clear what we're voting for.
Move the officer recommendation.
Which is to refuse. Okay.
Can we put the recommendation up on the board?
Well, the recommendation is to refuse. Okay. I don't know.
Okay.
But so it's been proposed, it's been seconded. All those in favour of refusing this application, please raise a hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And all those in favour of not refusing it, 2. So 5 to 2, I think the application is refused. So that's P4 2024 02697. Barn opposite Old Quarry Close, Worthing Travers, was refused. Right. And we have the usual hiatus while we wait for another officer to take over. So we're now moving on to item 10. Is agenda item PLBC 2024 02624 51 North Street, Wareham, BH 24AD. Been presented by Liz Adams.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So this one is in Wareham, so we all know where that is. And it's to the north of the designated town centre. So in here, I know it's a bit small, but you can see within the settlement boundary, which is in black, we've got the conservation area, which is in red, and then purple is the town centre boundary, and the red is the application site here. The building is the Grade 2 listed building, and it's the northernmost property within the 4 Georgian style units we built after the Great Fire. No changes are proposed to the front of the property, which contributes to the conservation area. Here we see the ground floor. So the proposal is currently in mixed use, and the proposal is that the whole building should become one dwelling. So at the moment, we've got the showroom down here on the ground floor. Anybody who's accessing the stairwell here still sort of walks through the shop to get to the residential area. And then there is a utility room and areas that serve the residential use. So the retail use is currently very limited. At first and second floor, there are currently 3 bedrooms, and that would remain the case, but new bathrooms would be added. So planning permission isn't strictly needed for those. Listed building consent has already been granted for the internal changes. To the rear of the property, the existing windows are to be replaced in the style fitting to the listed property, and the flat roof rear extension that you see here is to be replaced by an aluminium framed glazed roof single-storey extension. So again, these have been considered against the historic fabric and the setting of the listed building and judged acceptable. Just to clarify, there is parking provision to the rear of the site for up to 2 vehicles. So this is acceptable for a 3-bedroom house, and no changes to that are proposed. So the main consideration before members is whether the proposal successfully accords with planning policies that seek to retain commercial use in the town centre. So these are set out in your officer report. The last known retail use of this site was as something called Kushi Bazaar, which I could see on Google Street View in 2018. Officers are mindful that shopping habits have changed in response to the popularity of online shopping, and that's been accelerated by COVID. The last government sought to increase flexibility by introducing use class E, so that commercial uses can change without requiring planning permission between retail and offices and cafes, restaurants, even nurseries and indoor sports facilities. But due to the limited size of the shop floor, as you just saw, and its relationship with the residential use, it's envisaged that really this commercial area could only reasonably be used for retail or office in terms of realistic propositions. Now, no marketing details for the building have been provided to demonstrate that there's no interest in it as a commercial unit, but estate agent emails have been submitted that confirm there's limited market for retail floor space in this locality. Officers note that there are a few empty units in Wareham Town Centre, which appears to be relatively healthy. However, the very modest size of this retail unit and its relationship with the residential uses, you can see these ones marked in the red arrows are all already in residential use, and this is the site here. There's only 2 further commercial units beyond this unit to the north. One is occupied by a restaurant and the other by a tanning shop. So in this particular circumstances, officers have concluded that the conversion wouldn't harm the vitality and viability of the town centre. The shop hasn't been in commercial use for some time, but the shop window has been retained. And Wareham Neighbourhood Plan requires that commercial use should be maintained at ground floor level in the town centre. So this is contrary to that policy, but we haven't identified harm from the proposal to the vitality and viability of the centre of Wareham in this location. And that's why the recommendation before you is on balance one of approval. There's only 2 conditions proposed, which would be to secure the development in accordance with plans and the usual time commencement, because any other matters have been resolved through the listed building consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. We have 2 public speakers on this. We've got the applicant, Carly Frost, and we've got local board member who will speak from online. But first of all, Carly Frost.
Good afternoon, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Just to set out a few circumstances surrounding purchasing the property. I had a strong desire as a divorced single parent to live and bring up my son in Wareham. There was virtually no properties available at my small budget, and this one came up at auction. And I was advised that with a very, very small shopfront space and the fact that the neighbours next door had been granted permission for the exact same thing, identical in fact in 2016, that it would be unlikely that there would be any issues. And my main concerns then focused on retaining the historic preservation of the building because it's a beautiful Georgian townhouse. So I went through the full pre-planning application process starting in January this year and had the consultant round, and we ran through the entire building, and off of the back of his recommendation put in my proposals. It was then, if I'm honest, a shock that the town council objected to the loss of the retail space because the retail space hasn't existed as a retail for the two previous owners before me. So I'm now the third owner that hasn't wished to use it as retail, mainly because it just isn't practical. So living in the property, you come through the same front door. You have to walk through what would have been the shop to get to your downstairs bathroom, utility room, access to the rear garden. In order to change that back to a shop, you'd need to have a separate front door, which under listed building consent would not be allowable. So therefore, the residential property would only ever be accessed through a rear door. It would be very hard to segregate the two, commercial from residential. And currently, as it stands, anyone that would be using it as a business shop front would be involved in the part of the residence because the toilet that serves the only toilet that serves the property is downstairs. So it's an awkward proposition. From my point of view, I was just trying to do everything possible to ensure that I applied through the correct process, not having had to do this before, just wanting to live in it as a family home. I want to preserve the building. I want to make sure that the historical essence of it is maintained. It's got beautiful features, original features that I'm hoping to restore and keep as they are. The neighbours were granted the permission to do this. They've done it literally next door to me, converted an old shop front. Okay. And basically that I personally don't think that turning it back to its original form as a Georgian family home is going to harm the vitality of the building. It's going to preserve it because it's going to make sure those historic features are kept for future generations like myself to live in.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Next speaker on this is Councillor Ryan Holloway, who is online. Thanks so much. If you can take your seat back. We've got Councillor Ryan Holloway, who's one of the local ward members, who's going to speak to us online for 3 minutes. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just to clarify, I take it everyone can hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'm Councillor Ryan Holloway, and I'm the ward member for Wareham. Having a look at this application, Chairman, I am in the recommendation that I think it should be supported. As it says in the officer's report, is that basically there is quite a mix of residential and commercial spaces along North Street. So to me, this application is not unique. It's I think it's in keeping with obviously with the town's sort of rustic aesthetic. It is certainly, I think, a good way of reusing and redeveloping obviously an existing space that has been, as it's stated in the report, has been commercially empty now for quite some time. And there are other sort of properties and other commercial spots in the North Street that are sort of that have mixed uses. So I just want, basically, as a ward member, having looked at this carefully, I would like to support this as a plan, to grant planning permission for this, and also having discussed this with my other co-councillor Beryl Izzard, she is also in favour for supporting this as a local ward member for Dorset Council. So thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Do officers have a response they want to make to anything? No. I notice we don't have Wareham Town Council here. Do we have any comments from committee members? Any questions? Councillor Brenton.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chairman. Alex Brenton, Upton and Litchett. I remember going into this shop a few years ago. It used to be a sweet little shop, but a lot of the problem we have in small market towns like Wareham is lack of retail units that are being properly used. We have filling up in Wareham with charity shops, estate agents. How many hairdressers do you need? So the demand for small retail units has dropped off. North Street is a thoroughfare. People walk past it all the time. If there was going to be trade from passers-by, this shop would have survived in the past. So I would be perfectly happy for this to become a family home. So I support accepting this proposal.
Making a proposal?
I am making a proposal.
Okay, so you support the officers' recommendation to grant? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, any further? Are you seconding that, Tony?
I am indeed.
Councillor Coombs, I should say.
Councillor Coombs, Verwood. Just what I was going to say. I was very interested to hear in the presentation about the limitations for retail, given the small size of that showroom and the fact that there's a shared toilet. I can see why it's not viable as a business site, so I'm more than happy to second the proposal to grant this.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? So we have a proposal, we have a seconder. The proposal is to grant planning permission as per the officer's recommendation. Have a show of hands, those in favour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, unanimous. So application LBC 2024 02624 51 North Street, Wareham is approved. Thank you. Thank you for coming. We now move on to the final two items, which are the first of which is agenda item 11, is PFUL 2024-02944, Moors Valley Railway in Moors Valley Country Park. And we have it presented by Liz Adams.
I'm really sorry if you stick on my voice. So,
keep doing the job. Keep doing the job.
Yeah, the last two items are both with 4 members because they are on council-owned land. The Moors Valley Railway, you'll be familiar that it's to the north of St Leonard's, and for those who haven't visited or haven't been for a while, it's not a very good picture, sorry, but the shed complex is to the north of the car park, and you walk up past the lake, and it's to the north here. So Moors Valley Railway is within the country park site, and the application buildings are near to the Moors River System SSI. So if permission is granted for the changes to the roof of this building, it's recommended a condition be imposed to secure construction environmental management plan, just to ensure that no harm occurs to this SSI. It's within the Greenbelt and within 5 kilometres of Ether, but in this case that the proposal wouldn't result in any changes that would be significant. These are the buildings, and they were formerly part of the dairy farm that was converted to Moors Valley back in the 1980s when the park was formed. The proposal is to make to replace the roof, which is currently uninsulated and results in quite a lot of condensation. Everybody thinks the roof is leaking. So they want to overcome this issue by having an insulated roof with an open vent at the top. And this will slightly come forward by about 400 mil to the front and the rear of the existing. It would provide some protection for the timbers and the finishes, which are to be made good. There is blocking up of a window. That's on this bit actually. There's some change to the roof form both here and I think probably on the next slide. You can see that this area of roof here is to have the eaves raised to match the neighbouring part of the roof. And there's also a door, which I think maybe this one. This door is already in situ, but the proposal is to remove the redundant wooden doors. I think I've got some pictures for you. There's no change to the footprint. The new roof will not, well, there will be modest increases to the scale of the buildings, but these are considered to be proportionate in the green belt. And there we are. So that's the main gable frontage where the new roof is to go. This is the area where the roof is to be raised to match this sort of sawtooth effect here. And these are the redundant doors that are to be removed. There's already a pre-existing roller shutter that's to be retained. So the principle of development is acceptable. The impact on the green belt is negligible, and all other considerations are considered to be acceptable, subject to the conditions set out in the officer report. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. We have no public speakers registered on this one, so straight to committee. Councillor Gorringe, and then is your hand there raised, Councillor Morgan?
Yes, it is raised.
Oh, sorry, who pointed to me? Councillor Barry Gorringe, St Leonard's. This is in my ward. It's very well used as Moors Valley. I think it's somewhere in the region of a million visitors a year. And it wipes its face financially. I was over there a couple of weeks ago, and I noticed that they've already started work on the roof. So it's going to actually make an improvement. So I'm quite happy with that. So I'm recommended approval.
Okay, is that a proposal?
That's a proposal.
Okay, and do we have a seconder? Councillor Trite and David Morgan. Councillor Morgan wanted to speak. Sorry, his hand went up first. Sorry, to second it. But you're the next speaker.
I was going to second.
You're going to second it.
So I'm happy for Councillor Morgan to second if he wishes.
So it's proposed, seconded, thirded.
Well, magnificent, overwhelmed.
Do you want to, do either of you wish to say anything about it, or are you simply seconding?
No, I think if it enhances our property, which it obviously does, and knowing more about it, then I think yes, no reason why we shouldn't go ahead.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts? So we have a proposal which is seconded, which is to follow the officer's recommendation, which is to grant subject to conditions. Show of hands for those in favour of that proposal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Unanimous. So P4 2024-02944 is approved. And we'll move on to the last application on the agenda, which is P4 2024-03747 Beer Regis Primary School. And in this case, it's not Liz Adams. We have Victoria Chivas. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposal brought before you is for a temporary classroom for a period of up to 5 years at Beer Regis Primary School. It's brought before you because it's on council-owned land. Application site is towards the south of Beer Regis, where the principle of proposed temporary classroom is considered acceptable in accordance with policy V1, E12 and I7 of the perfect local plan. Application site outlined in red and the council-owned land is marked in the green on the screen. As set out in the officer's report, the main considerations are the impact on the character of the area and the impact on neighbouring amenity. There are 4 semi-detached properties on Egdon Close, are located to the south-east of the school and were identified as properties which would be most impacted by the proposal. They retain a distance of 80 metres from the rear boundaries, therefore no harm to the neighbouring amenity is anticipated. These diagrams show the elevations and floor plans for the proposed container. It will be approximately 9.7 metres long, 6 metres wide and have a height of 2.6 metres. Flat roof and will provide level access. These are some of the photos that show the approximate location of the classroom and where it will be situated within the playground. There will be some of the playground area will be lost. Obviously, it will provide additional school capacity. These photos show the location from the exterior of the boundaries to demonstrate the limited visibility from the street scene. Within the setting, it's considered that no harm will come to the character of the area, and the community benefits will include increased school capacity. In summary, the proposal provides an immediate community benefit, which will result in no harm to the character of the area or the neighbouring community, subject to the conditions to ensure it is removed after the 5-year temporary period. We are recommending for approval.
Thank you, Victoria. Again, we have no public speakers on this and move straight to the committee. And I have Councillor Coombs, who's the first to raise hand, and I think Councillor is waving his hand at me.
We think.
We think.
Second.
So, Councillor Coombs.
Councillor Coombs forward. I'm really pleased to see this because I was the instigator of the school being built when I was portfolio holder for children, Dorset County, and I'm so pleased to see it's turned out to be such a success. And I'm happy to move the recommendation for grant.
Okay. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, Councillor Morgan from Wimborne. Yes, like Councillor Coombs has said, it's good to see that this. I felt still why it's called a container.
Yes.
When I taught in a hub like that, it was far from a container. Container children, all right, but it wasn't known as a container.
Fulfills its purpose.
But first of all, it's good to see that the school is expanding in some way, and that hopefully the school could be built possibly after the next 5 years, which I see. Having said that, the school I taught in took 40 years before they rebuilt it. That was up at Colwell, but so hopefully things have speeded up a bit. So I think as it's the Dorset school, and it's good to see the need for it. I second the proposal. Yes. I'm assuming that one of the criticisms, and obviously this has been addressed now, one of the criticisms is the fact that people could get asbestosis. You might say, how do you do that? Well, the old cabins obviously had asbestos in. If you spend 10 years putting drawing pins in and taking drawing pins out, it was in the air all the time. And in actual fact, it was the death of a teacher that taught in a hut like that for 30 years that brought all this asbestos to the surface. So that was good. But of course, things will now have improved, I trust. That's why it's a container. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Yeah, I assume there's very little asbestos in these new containers. Do we have any members wishing to make any further comments, questions? In which case we'll go to the vote. So we have a proposal to grant subject to conditions. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, unanimous. So P4 2024-03747 is approved.
We don't have an idea.
So there are a moment of indulgence. There are no urgent items and there are no exempt items scheduled for this meeting, which brings us to the end of the agenda today. I take this opportunity to thank you for attending. I now declare the meeting closed.